very much welcome. My name is Kaivalya Kashyap. On the podcast Path to Wellbeing, we have a very special guest today, Amber. So, hello, Amber.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for coming here and seeing us and being with us. Path to Wellbeing, just that everyone is aligned with that. It is our path to manifest holistic well-being, a sustainable well-being, in a sense how we believe that well-being for a human being should be, for every part in the creation. So it should be joyful, it should be happy, it should be abundance, it should allow all the emotions which we as humans sometimes judge and positive or negative to take place. So this path to well-being will end up, or will begin, not end up, will begin with a story to have a location, to have a hotel where we will fulfill all these requirements. Again, this place is a place which has no limitations. So that's not like one direction or we're the only one knowing that. The world doesn't work like that from our opinion. So Path to Wellbeing and the place itself, our Wellbeing Center, will be an open house for people who truthfully and authentically care about the creation. So that's a long introduction from my side. I want to turn to you, Amber, and I'm really, really happy we saw each other, we met each other online.
Exactly.
Now in the real life to have you here, it's just a blessing. How do you feel? How is your well-being state today?
My well-being state is good today. I'm very, very, very happy to be here. And yeah, I woke up. One of the many hats that I wear is that I am trained in something called the somatic activated healing method. And it's a somatic dance method. But it's a very integrated, for me, it's the most embodied process that I know. It's a mix of active meditation, breath work, mantras, ecstatic dance, and very targeted moves that activate 20 of the emotions on the emotional scale. And so I had a great morning doing a little dance session with my daughter.
Wow.
And that was how I kicked it off before coming over here. And then
Thank you so much for preparing in that sense. Actually, I feel like joining, but that would be really not be the topic of our podcast today. How old is your daughter?
She is 8.
What's her name?
India.
India. What a name. What a name.
So she is wonderful. And she came up with her own mantra this morning. She was dancing, saying, "I am free and I am worthy."
So true.
And I was just like,
The other day I had a podcast with Bayo Akumulafe, and we were coming up, he was coming up with this, we should be more playful. And if I listen to what your daughter and you are doing, this is truly getting into the day playfully as such.
Exactly. I think most of my journey has really been inspired by her. I think becoming a mother, the gift that I was totally unprepared for was the chance to reparent myself alongside her. That, in seeing her joy and seeing her wonder and her spark and her creativity, I didn't want to put any of it out. And so in trying to nurture that, I began to question, well, then why do I accept situations that make me feel that way? And really, using motherhood I remember during COVID was really a changing point for me because I always went running. I mean, I've always exercised and been fit, but I didn't really enjoy running. I do now, actually. But during COVID, the forests were empty, and I would go into the forest and I started skipping instead of running. I would listen to music and I would skip and I would dance on benches because there was nobody around to judge me. And that freedom that came from that level of play was so transformational. And now we're 4 years later and I actually still do skip and dance in the forest.
Very good.
Even if people are around. It's just, that's my way of communing and connecting to the natural world and to myself and my intuition and that joy. And, and I think that has transformed my life of one that I spent most of my life, like most people, very triggered. And learning how to tap into the play and the joy has been able to transition me into the glimmers of really...
Beautiful. If I would be your daughter, India, 11 years old, asking you, what is mental health? Like, why are humans from a point of a child, why are humans getting into these issues with mental health? What would be your answer to your daughter?
One, I think it's, I think that we have enculturated shame too deeply throughout the culture as our way of discipline or helping with rules. And so I think that children embody too much shame. I think that technology, sadly, has really disembodied our children. And I think that part of the childlike wonder is that children still have the balance of their right brain and their left brain, the feminine and the masculine working together in a really unique way. Unfortunately, devices are created in a way that move them completely into their left brain far too early. And then social pressures. And I think from this kind of 8, 9 age, I start to see the difference in my daughter of, being more aware of what people think and what expectations are. And so I think that all well-being journeys are a journey into our own hearts and into being our own best friend and into liking ourselves. And so that's, for me, the key part of parenting. It doesn't mean that I always get it right or that I don't get angry or I don't occasionally inadvertently shame my daughter. But when I see that I do these things, I take responsibility for them. I talk to her about them. One of the things I'm trying to learn how to dance right now is how to explain what is right and wrong, but in a way that doesn't shame. And it's a delicate dance. I'm still learning, absolutely. But I think trying to keep this wholeheartedness, this daring greatly, this vulnerability, the full embodiment that our emotions are safe, that they can be fully expressed, that there's room for them. And, I think that for our generation, there's so much burnout, depression, autoimmune disorder, that there's more and more medical research showing links to cancer, all sorts of diseases and mental health disorders. It's somatic. It's into the body. When we detach from our emotions, when we don't have ways to safely express them, they make us sick, mentally and physically. And so I don't know if that exactly answered your question, but the way I'm trying my best to raise my daughter is for her to feel safe to fully express herself. And to be in touch with her emotions.
Beautiful. Because I think there's if I listen to you, I feel also that there's a responsibility. Also a responsibility naturally for growing up or for walking the path with the child. But secondly, also to what we bring out in this world. If we talk about well-being, if we talk about mental health, then there's also responsibility that we do that truthfully, because if that action of guiding a young person, citizen, as well as maybe something new which comes into play, if we do that the same way as we have done it in the past, then we will not really move ahead. We will not cure the source of the issue, which you describe as something which is part of it, maybe our shame, part of it, our technology, and also how we connect with each other. So I think that there is a risk. How do you personally see that? Because there are a lot of initiatives there. The other day I heard there are like 900,000 mental health apps on this world. I mean, if there are so many mental health apps on this world, we shouldn't have any issue with that, because everyone should have one, actually, by the way, who is really interested in that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a place for apps in all of our lives. I certainly use plenty of them, although I think that stepping away from apps as the solution and stepping back into community, into human connection, into nature, that we need more of that, that we need more human connection and connection to the natural world. I personally believe that we have become far too disconnected, and this could get me off on a tangent around climate change and other issues, but I believe I have a very hopeful sense of humanity and our future, because the solutions and the technology and all of that exists. The only reason I believe that we don't see the rate of acceleration that's needed is because we're too disconnected. We're disconnected from ourselves. We're disconnected from one another. We're disconnected from nature. And so people have these amazing solutions to the world's problems, and yet they're operating in their own little silo and world, and everybody's competing against each other instead of co-creating and bringing these solutions together, raising pools of money from investors in a very cohesive, coherent way. It's very, very disconnected. And so, however we can get to build communities that are connected and rooted like mycelial networks, like the natural world, then I think some of those issues, I hope, will decrease. I think that isolation and fear of speaking up, so many people, myself included until quite recently, we really have blocked throat chakras. We've been shamed or judged for saying things that others don't agree with, so we learn it's better not to speak. And all of these things, if we can come together in community, if we can have places to, as Brene Brown would say, dare greatly and live wholeheartedly in community, in safety, to be able to share vulnerably. It doesn't solve all the mental health crises, but it solves a lot of them.
Now, if you look at what I've heard of your initiative, MindSpark, very exciting about that, because whatever you tell me, actually, that is fulfilling that. What is the vision of MindSpark? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, the vision of MindSpark is really one to create a global ecosystem that brings together startups, corporates, policymakers, governments, NGOs, healthcare centers and providers, universities and researchers. One thing that we see is that it's hard because there's not even common language. In some groups, you can't talk about mental health. You can only talk about brain health. In some groups, you can't talk about either one. You can only talk about well-being. And so it's hard to create a global movement around mental health and well-being when even the people that are most engaged in the process can't find a common language. And so I think MindSpark really aims to bridge this, to become this disruptive force for innovation and connection in the mental health space on a global scale.
Cool. And if you look at it, how far is MindSpark on that sense?
Yeah, it was just launched at the beginning of this year. I joined in April. And we are in the process of launching the House of Mental Health. Let me rephrase that. The House of Brain and Mental Health.
Okay, changed.
It has changed.
Okay.
And that will happen at WEF in January of 2025. Right now, we have an open call to corporate sponsors and universities and others who want to work with us on, that forum, that platform. So that's really, really exciting. We're also partnering with the European Brain Council on the Brain Innovation Days in November. And then I think, the two main ways that we're focused at the moment is working with startups and incubating, accelerating them, helping them find investors, bringing them to corporates to find more opportunity, and then working through corporate consulting engagements on corporate well-being and executive leadership trainings.
So please follow MindSpark, actually, what guys are doing. That sounds inspiring, and actually exactly that what you mean, what it needs, because from a mental issue, it's a connection topic. I think in the end of the day, you might call it technology, you might call it shame, or whatever it is. If we truly connect to shame, if we truly connect to a technology, all that is a blessing. But if we misuse it for our egocentric perspectives, then it will not work. And I think you talked also before we had our start of the podcast about the true collaboration. I think that really also makes a lot of importance in the way we act, in the way we act together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've been, I have my own business, Found, and I've been running that since 2012, and I do a lot of advisory for impact startups. I do, coaching and well-being, somatic storytelling, and I also promote small, emerging, ethically produced designers. So it's sort of conscious living, conscious production, conscious consumption, conscious communication, conscious investing. The way that we live our life and every decision we make contributes to the world in which we live and how we ultimately feel about our life. So I see Found very much as an invitation or a way to become more connected and alive. And it's through that I have seen this element of, working with other impact startups in climate and biodiversity and, all food systems. This is where I've seen that I really feel like if we could interconnect and collaborate more, things would move much faster.
And I think one point which you also mentioned, like if the pressure is there, like if everything goes smooth, it is easy to be mentally strong, to be strongly connected. But if things go wrong, if things come into on the peak, on a challenge, then you see the difference of a human being. Absolutely. Like, okay, how is that person truly connected? How do they stick to the ethics and values? To be a startup in that area doesn't make you actually an organization which will fulfill that as long as you not really pass these tests.
Yeah.
I mean, what is your observation with seeing a lot of these startups in these areas?
Yeah, I think, having a startup is like being a parent in many ways. And I think, parenthood, entrepreneurship, you're going to meet all of your triggers. You're going to meet all of your shadows. Yeah. You're going to, in chasing the light, you have to deal with the dark. Yeah. One cannot escape it. Yeah. And so for me, I think that one of the greatest challenges of entrepreneurship is this one of learning from and leaning into our triggers. I don't think that anyone can be a great leader without being comfortable in the discomfort. This is one of the main things that I teach. I cold swim. I've been winter swimming now for 4 years.
Cool.
And people say to me all the time, "That's so cool that you do that, but I don't like cold water." And I'm like, no one likes cold water. That is the point of it. Now I do actually love it because you get this great dope. I've studied it more over the years and the dopamine hit and everything. Yeah. I mean, once you go into that cold water, ice cold, go in January, December on a snowy day and get into that water, you come out thinking there's nothing in the world that I can't do. And cool. So there's, but the greater point of it, and the reason I love to talk about it and share it and take clients out to go cold swimming with me, and I want to create this fall really group meetups to go do this together, because for me it's the access point. It's the easiest access point to getting comfortable in the discomfort. And great leadership needs that, because you're going to be uncomfortable all the time. And as long as one is trying to navigate around that and escape it and find a comfort, it's a shield. And it doesn't protect, but it's a shield that doesn't protect. And so, yeah, it's that for me is the missing piece in a lot of cases. And the only constant in life is change. This is the most permanent part of our life. And the two things that are most needed is an adaptability to change. And in that can also be failure. Failure, I think, is enormously misunderstood. I think that all great leaders, all great organizations, we're failing. As human beings, we're failing constantly. We should truly be failing as much as we're succeeding, if not more, because it means that we're trying and we're innovating. There is no failure unless you get stuck in the emotion of that and you feel the shame or the whatever, and you get stuck somewhere in a depressive state. But failure in and of itself is simply a data point and a redirection. And so I think that as we move into a world of more impactful or sacred entrepreneurship, it's this human element of embracing change, of embracing uncertainty, of being able to be comfortable in the discomfort and navigate and lead through that courageously, vulnerably, authentically.
I don't know how you feel, but if you listen to Amber, I don't know if it's the same state as me. It's beautiful to listen to you, because one feels actually how authentic that comes over, that you pass this message across. It really is inspiring to listen to you. If one, I am bored by this world where you have to, you're not allowed to say mental, you have to say brain, you're not allowed to say divine, you're not allowed to say God. Yeah. And I learned that from my mother, just do it, just do it. We are creating, we want to propose a solution to free the people, but we do it with such much chain and in such a prison that actually all our mission or all our action again is bringing them from A to B, but B is not really much more fruitful than A was, and it's an action to bring them there. So if we act actually towards liberating people, towards giving them freedom, then it needs to come from the heart. So we should really observe actually our part of how we act, our part of how we are in discomfort, which I truly agree with you. How are we? Be honest to ourselves. We don't need to share it with anyone outside if we feel discomfort. But the point is how am I? Am I truthfully following my path or not? And if I want to correct myself, I'm free to correct myself, but I should not try to display anything else than that who I am.
Yeah, and I think that gets into why I use the phrase in my own personal work, outside of MindSpark, but in the journey that I am right now, a lot of the programs and work that I'm creating is around what I say is unbecoming. We have to unbecome much of what we've been conditioned to be in order to become ourselves, to become who we want to be in the world. And the middle part of that for me is around what I call somatic storytelling, that our brains too often control the narrative. And it's important to have a starting point of having that cerebral brain story so that we can connect with what part of this resonates, what part of this am I really proud of, what part really feels like me and feels authentic, what part is making me feel stuck, what part isn't aligned. And then there needs to be from my perspective, need is maybe a strong word, but I perceive that the next step after that is to drop the story entirely and to really learn how to get into the body with dance, with movement, with breath work, meditation, whatever it might be that one uses. There's so many amazing tools out there, but to get out of the stories of our mind and fully present in our body. And one realizes that, factually, emotions pass in 90 seconds. It's the stories that we attach to them that stay stuck. And so learning more and more tools to be able to navigate that liminal space of change in a way that feels very embodied, where we learn not to just be constantly distracting ourselves with phones, with food, with entertainment, with, people, surroundings, drinking, whatever, our whole culture has been taught to distract and numb ourselves in order to avoid feeling the things. But actually, the only part that is painful is when we're avoiding the feelings because they're stuck in us and they make us sick. But if we learn tools to really become present in the present moment and feel and cry, and I just had one last weekend where I just really felt something. There was a lot coming up and I was crying a lot, and my best friend was like, and I said to her, no, it's beautiful. I'm so happy I'm doing this because tomorrow I'm going to feel great. Tomorrow the sun will shine again. It's only if I don't allow this flowing of the waters from my body to free me, that this is, I'm actually no longer, when I was triggered by something, but I didn't trigger out at that person. I allowed the space to have it illuminate what inside me still needs healing. What part of myself I felt disrespected about something, but I realized it wasn't about the other person. I felt disrespected because I was disrespecting myself because I wasn't speaking up about something that I needed to say. And so when we make the safe space and time to allow ourselves to feel the triggering things and to feel the sadness, it disappears almost immediately. It just goes from our body. And then we can come back to center and lead from an authentic, aligned place.
Beautiful. I think you listen very much that if you believe that it's someone else or another situation, then you'll still be in the ignorant state. Sorry about that straight comment. It is about us. It's about our opportunity to grow. It's about our opportunity to experience a feeling and emotion truthfully. And please check out Amber and also MindSpark to know more about that. If you look at a well-being center, from your point of view, what should a well-being center have? What is the main point of a well-being center, a place in the nature as such? What would you put in there?
Well, I mean, of course, it all builds around the community. Mm-hmm. There has to be an aligned culture mm-hmm. and a community of like-minded souls who are not just having jobs, but who mm-hmm. are living and breathing mm-hmm. the spirit, so that everybody who walks through the door mm-hmm. feels that human connection. They feel the energy. So, I think that in all of these spaces, the energy that is felt mm-hmm. the second you walk through the door mm-hmm. is almost the most important part. Mm-hmm. That, mm-hmm. You need big windows and fresh air and lots of light. It needs to be out in nature with nature walks and mm-hmm. hikes and excursions, plenty of space for silence. I think, mm-hmm. I haven't done a silent retreat yet, mm-hmm. but it's one of the things that is most pressing on my psyche right now that I need. I would, if I were creating...
We'll invite you to our place then.
Perfect, I can't wait. And I have a very, very dear friend, Susanna van der Becke, and she runs these amazing retreats. I haven't been to one of hers yet, but they look incredible. But I know one of the things that they're struggling with is to get people to let go of mm-hmm. their phones. Mm-hmm. And I think that is really, mm-hmm. to get away from the technology mm-hmm. in these retreats, in these spaces, that this is really a huge part of it, that, it's shifting. Not to say that there's anything wrong with living in our left brain. We need mm-hmm. some of that, but mm-hmm. we have two halves of our brain for a reason. They need mm-hmm. to become in balance. And as long as we're constantly scrolling and looking at our phone and getting the dopamine hits there, it's really hard to shift over to the right space where you then see more of the interconnection and the alignment and the flow and that divine feminine energy, which is not just to speak for women. Mm-hmm. Women need the masculine, men need the feminine. These energies need to balance together. And I think when we can get the technology out of these spaces, it allows for more expansion, in my opinion.
So that we definitely can promise. Technology will be out of that place, and it will be a place where you can have whatever you require at that very moment. For everyone, it's different as such. But I think a human being should again sense, what do I really need at this moment? And then go and take ownership, responsibility for that. Last point, Amber, I could go on for long with you, but we'll definitely meet again, exactly. I'm sure. If you would have a boon, a wish for humanity in terms of mental health, what would be that? Divine would give you a boon.
I think it's this, they always say that the longest journey in the whole world is this tiny space from your head to your heart. And in order to really move into your heart, we have to get to a place of worthiness, of self-love, that we are constantly looking for the answer out there, outside of ourselves. And of course, it's so important to find great teachers and guides and mentors and coaches and things to, people who we feel inspire a journey that we want to walk along. But with realizing, which I think it's taken me many years to get to the point of realizing, we oftentimes choose people not because they're experts. We shouldn't be there to learn from them. We choose people because they're mirrors, because that part of ourselves is, even if it's just tiny, it's alive in ourselves somewhere. And so we're choosing guides and mentors to spark alive something that's already inside of ourselves. And so focusing more on befriending ourselves, getting to know ourselves, like not seeking, but really this embodiment of the truth of who we are and the safety to do that, I think. you know.
I'll take that. I'll place that. I hope Divine listened very carefully. I'm sure with you speaking open-heartedly to the source as such. So thanks a lot for being with us, taking your time out. Please check out a wonderful talk, I feel. I think you will also agree to that. Mindspark and also Amber, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so
and
much.
And definitely we'll walk that path together. I can't wait for that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. It's been a real joy. Thank you.
Good.